Hey guys, welcome to part 2. I'm going to be going over numbers 11 through 15, and so hopefully you can follow along. I'm going to tell you right now that number 10 and number 14 are probably the hardest questions on here. And it's not because, well, they're really hard to do. It's because they have two rules that you should have remembered how to do. And if you don't remember them, then you're going to have a bad time. If you guys don't remember, the rules kind of look like flip-flops. So I'll try my best to draw two flip-flops for us. Oh my gosh. So here's one flip-flop, and here is the other flip-flop. So the first flip-flop is basically saying that we need to flip our inequality when the variable is on the right side of the inequality. So for example, say we have 2 is greater than x. This is not wrong, but like we talked about in our previous video, I don't really like the x being on this side. So we need to flip, well, the whole thing. So x was normally on the right, but now we're going to put it on the left. The 2 was on the left, and I put it on the right. And because we flipped the left and the right, we should also flip the inequality. So now it becomes x is less than 2. The other time we flip the inequality is when we multiply or divide by a negative number. And I'm about to show you an example with number 10. As you can see, it says 7x is less than 98. Negative 7x, sorry. So you know negative 7x is the same thing as saying negative 7 times x. And so we need to do the opposite with this to always get our variable by itself. In this case, I'm going to divide both sides by negative 7 because the opposite of multiplying in this case is dividing. What I do on one side, I have to do on the other. And so we have negative 7 divided by 7, which is 1. So I'm left with x all by myself. Next, I have 98 divided by negative 7. I know a positive and a negative make a negative number. And 98 divided by 7 should be 14. So that means that 98 divided by negative 7 equals negative 14. Because we multiplied or divided by a negative number, we have to flip the sign. So you should have gotten x is greater than negative 14. So I know that it's going to be open circle because we have no or equal to line. And then we can use our arrow to say, oh yeah, it's pointing to the right. If you wanted to check our work, we can say, is negative 16 greater than negative 14? And it's not. And is negative 12 greater than negative 14? And it is. So that's how we would solve if we were multiplying and dividing by a negative number. Now we have this. We have x divided by 6 is greater than or equal to 7. A big thing to remember is that if this looks like a fraction, that's good. One of my students told me that a fraction is just a fancy way of dividing, and I really like how they said that, because this is a fancy way of saying x divided by 6. We need to do the opposite of 6, or we have to do the opposite of dividing by 6 to make sure that we have a 1. And if you divide by 6 and then multiply by 6, you get the same original number. And then 7 times 6 is 42. Because I did not multiply or divide by a negative number, I don't need to flip the inequality. And so I have 42 as my answer. I know it's a closed circle because there's an or equal to sign, and it's pointing to the right. because 40 is not greater than or equal to 42, but 44 is greater than or equal to 42. And so we have our arrow pointing the correct way, and we have our closed circle. Now we have x minus 14 is less than or equal to 45. I need to make a zero pair here, so I need to do the opposite of negative 14, which is positive 14. And what I do on one side, I have to do to the other. So that makes a zero pair. And then we have 45 plus 14, which should have been 59. So this one was pretty straightforward. I know it's a closed circle because I have a line that says or equal to. And is 58 less than or equal to 59? Yes. Is 60 less than or equal to 59? No. That is why my arrow is pointing to the left, the same way my inequality is. Okay, halfway done. We have 12x is less than or equal to 55 2/10. This is 12 times x, so the opposite of multiplying by 12 is dividing both sides by 12, because 12 divided by 12 will equal 1. So I have x by itself, which is always our end goal. 55 2/10 divided by 12, really quick, that should be a 4. And so you should have 4 6/10. Because we did not multiply divide by a negative number, I do not need to flip my inequality. So I'm just picking random intervals to change my numbers by. If you did like 4 6/10, 4 7/10, 4 8/10, that's perfectly fine. Or if you did something different. As long as your circle is in the correct place, as well as your arrow pointing the right direction, that's all I really truly care about. So this is a closed circle, and we are pointing to the left. Because 4 2/10 is not less than or equal to, 4 2/10 is less than or equal to 4 6/10, but 5 is not less than or equal to 4 6/10. So I had a student ask me if it mattered if we flipped first and then solved the problem, or if we solved the problem and then flipped first. And honestly, I don't really mind either way, as long as like the flipping is in the process. So what I'm going to do is kind of show you both ways, and then you can figure out for yourself which one you like more. The first way I'm going to show is if we just solve it without flipping the inequality, and then we flip it at the very end. So I know a lot of people try to do, 29, because we're used to having it on the left, but there's nothing to have by itself. Our goal is to get our variable by itself, which is why in reality we should subtract both sides by 12, because positive 12 and negative 12 make a zero pair. I keep the sign because I didn't multiply or divide by a negative number, and then we have 29 minus 12, which should have been 17. If you flip the inequality, you should have gotten x is less than 17, and then you could have had an open circle on 17 because there's no or equal to, and then you could have drawn the arrow this way, because while 15 is less than 17, 19 is not. Say you don't like that way, that's okay. You can also do it like this. 29 is greater than x plus 12. And from the beginning, if you don't want to just, leave it alone, we can just flip the whole thing. Please remember that this is the right side and this is the left side. So we're just moving this over here and then moving this over here. So I'm going to write x plus 12 and then 29. If we flip this, we also have to flip our inequality. And so you have x plus 12 is less than 29. I subtract both sides by 12 because that makes a zero pair. This is 17. I keep the sign because I did not multiply or divide by a negative number. And that's how I got x is less than 17. So it's the same thing really, it's just depending on if you're going to forget to flip in the beginning or if you're going to forget to flip in the end. As long as you flip the inequality to have the x on the left side, you should be fine. Because then you can say, oh, this is a less than, and it's an arrow pointing to the left, which is why we are coloring in all the numbers that are less than x. And last but not least, we have number 15, which is, wow, the similar concept because the x is on the quote-unquote wrong side. I'm just going to do this by making a zero pair of negative 18 and positive 18. I'm going to be doing positive 18 on the left side as well. So if x is greater than 8 plus 6, which is 14, and then 104. Remember that I don't prefer it like this. I prefer my x to be on the left side. So I'm going to flip our inequality to have 104. So it says x is less than 104. It's an open circle, and if 100 is less than 104, but 108 is not less than 104. That's how we know our inequality or our number line is facing to the right. So these are the 6 problems. They took a little bit to do, but I tried to be as thorough as possible to help you guys understand how to solve these equations or these inequalities. I hope it helped, and stay tuned for next time when I do these problems.